Now, today is Thursday, and as ever on this day of the week, we take a look back at some of the biggest stories of the week in the United States. Loads to talk about, and today we're joined by Angie Wong, who is a Republican strategist. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. Always a pleasure having you on the program, and Happy New Year to you, Angie.
Thanks, Tom.
Now, President Trump says he's been told that the killings in Iran's crackdown on protesters has now eased. And he appears to be adopting a bit of a wait-and-see approach to what, if anything, the United States does next in regards to Iran. What's been the reaction in the United States to these developments?
Yeah, the reaction is trust but verify. Prior to President Trump making the announcement that he has a source saying that the killings have stopped in Iran, he was very happy. And I think the takeaway from that announcement was that the two sides are now talking, because prior to that, there was a perfect storm. And this particular protest in Iran feels a little bit different than that of 2019 and 2022. This one has a lot of momentum, a lot of international coverage. We know that there's been some water shortages in the cities there. We know that the intensity of the protesters have really ramped up. And it could be because of social media, because Trump has gotten involved. We're not sure. But now it seems as though there's been a little bit of a pause, and we hope that this pause is real. But again, I think President Trump, although he welcomes the news, he needs to verify this.
Okay, I mean, he's not ruling out, is he, potential U.S. military action?
No, and right now we're moving our warships over there. It's very, very visible. Where President Trump has said on his social media that help is on its way, and I think that is what's happening right now. There's still a long, long ways to go into a real permanent pause. We're even hearing news of this morning that the judges in Iran have not gotten the memo. They're still issuing out orders for executions. So I think this is just the very beginning, but hopefully a delegation will appear soon, either here on stateside or over anywhere who wants to host these meetings to actually talk this one through, because I think there's been a lot of positioning happening. The U.S. is ready. Certainly, we don't want to commit boots on the ground, but there are some certainly rumors that there might be some airstrikes pending. So that could be as early as this week.
Right, and we've been keeping a very close eye on that story all week, and I'm assuming it's front page news as well in the United States. Let's move on to another topic, because a topic we've also had our eye on but haven't talked about quite so much in the last few days is Greenland. And the foreign ministers of Denmark and Greenland met the US Vice President J.D. Vance and Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Washington yesterday. And I'm just wondering whether anything had changed as a result of that dialogue at the White House.
Well, I think the foreign minister of Denmark said it best. He wants all three countries to work together. And why is that? Because right now the U.S. Is spending close to $4 billion on military operations and maintenance in Greenland. They need us as well to help guard the Arctic, right? Whether the adversaries are China, Russia, as Trump says, we're guarding the Arctic on behalf of Greenland and Denmark, and we're pouring a lot of money into it. So in a sense, we're already working together, but President Trump wants more. And it's not all that far-fetched, right? You know, the U.S. in its history has been known to acquire a lot of land. I mean, we have the Louisiana Purchase, we have Alaska and the Mexican secession. We have a lot of, things that we've acquired over time. So this could be our latest one. I think that President Trump really wants this. He wants it for the Golden Dome that he wants to build, and he wants it for national security. And if Marco Rubio can pull this off, along with J.D. Vance, this would be probably the biggest deal for the art of the deal president.
Okay, but I mean, the opinion polls, at least the ones I'm seeing, maybe you've got some different ones, seem to suggest that most Americans do not support any kind of military action to take Greenland. 1 in 5 Republicans support military action to take Greenland. And the people of Greenland don't want to be part of the United States, and they've said that. I mean, maybe you've got some different polls. Maybe it does vary from one poll to another. But what do you think the calculations will be? Do you think there might be a bit of a rethink on this notion of seizing control of Greenland?
Yeah, I think it's very doubtful that we're going to put U.S. military to seize any land. We're not trying to be imperialist here. I think Donald Trump wants to make a deal. He's offered the citizens in Greenland $100,000 each to go independent. Now, he does all these things, but clearly they're all in talks. I think there could be some sort of concession made where there's more U.S. interest and certainly U.S. development in Greenland. I think that could be some sort of middle ground step. But right now, the key really is national security. And I think that is agreed upon with all the parties involved here. The Arctic route could very well also be the new Polar Silk Road. And there's going to be so much trade. So if the U.S. can acquire that shipping lane as well as have control of the Panama Canal, essentially we will control the Western Hemisphere as far as shipping and trade goes. And I think that's what President Trump is really after.
I'm just reading between the lines some of the comments that came out of that meeting at the White House between those two foreign ministers, J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio. Denmark's foreign minister said there was a fundamental disagreement. The discussions were described as frank but constructive. We're also being told that this idea of acquiring Greenland or conquering Greenland is totally unacceptable. Doesn't sound very promising, does it? Doesn't sound like the mood was too cordial.
Well, the mood wasn't there. And quite honestly, what's the alternative that Denmark has now, right? If the U.S. moves its military base, for example, will Denmark be able to support and defend Greenland if there were adversaries? Right now, it doesn't appear that they have the money or capital to do so. And they certainly, since we're already there, I think, an argument can be made that the U.S. can pretty much do whatever we want militarily there as long as it is supportive of Greenlanders. But I think President Trump wants to really help develop the country. I think economically, there could be so much development and growth for Greenlanders that it could be mutually beneficial. So we're not looking at it in a terse way. We're not looking at it as an adversarial way. I think we just want to help develop what could be potentially one of the best known real estate developments left on Earth. So hopefully some sort of deal could be made here.
Okay, well, let's hope it's a deal and not a military solution, because French military personnel are on their way apparently to Greenland, and NATO forces are on the way as well. So presents some pretty interesting dilemmas for NATO allies. Now, let's move on to the topic of immigration, because as part of Washington's intensifying crackdown on immigration, the US State Department says it's suspending the processing of immigrant visas for applicants from some 75 different countries. And this pause is going to take effect next Wednesday. It won't affect, however, temporary tourist or business visas, but still a huge number of countries on that list, Angie. I expect you've read through it. But, President Trump did campaign with pledges of stopping illegal immigration, though some might say, no, not this, because this is about legal immigration. How's all of this gone down?
Yes, and I trust Marco Rubio has data that you and I are probably not seeing. I could tell you what the narrative is here in the U.S. A lot of it is based on a lot of the Somalian fraud that's been discovered in Minnesota here, and a lot of them use legal immigration processes to get here. So I think because the U.S. doesn't have a real working system right now to vet migration coming in, Marco Rubio wants to put a pause on all this. And I think they've been talking about this for a long time. Yes, 75 countries is a lot. I was actually surprised to see Pakistan there, but not India. I was surprised to see a few countries that I didn't know had any sort of issues with the U.S., like Barbados, for example. But, this is kind of a, better wait than be sorry kind of approach. And I think that's a policy that Marco Rubio wants to take. Until the U.S. can vet ideology, can vet those coming in to take and abuse our welfare systems, we need to put a stop on all of this until we get it right. And I think that is what the Trump administration wants. I don't believe this is going to be a forever policy, certainly not throughout the next 3 years of the Trump administration. But right now, our systems are very antiquated and we need to fix them. We need to modernize them, and we need to be able to vet every single person who comes in here legally. And again, this does not affect any sort of tourism or student visas. These are just for the long stay visas.
Okay, well, the country that jumped out at me was the Bahamas. I was very surprised to see that country on the list, all 75 of them. Let's move on, because there's been some fresh unrest in Minneapolis this week with another immigration-related shooting in the city. An immigration officer is reported to have shot and wounded a Venezuelan man. And there are escalating tensions there in Minnesota's most populous city. Now, the presence of ICE officers on the street, combined with news of these new violent incidents, including last week's deadly shooting of a 37-year-old woman, has triggered some clashes between law enforcement officials and protesters. Now, President Trump is currently threatening to invoke a law that allows domestic deployment of the military. What's the latest on what's happening?
That's right. President Trump, just an hour ago, wants to bring on the Insurrection Act on Minnesota lawmakers because they are impeding ICE operations. And that is, this is a real shame, because essentially the leaders of Minnesota state is having their local law enforcement stand down and not work with federal agencies. And this is where a lot of clashing is happening, because the federal officers there on the ground, they don't have the lay of the land. They don't know the locals. They're not able to reach out into communities the same way the local law enforcement can. And because of this, they're looked at as strangers, as aliens, as people coming in to invade their state. And that is a really sad state of affairs. The two agencies, the two law enforcement agencies, should be working hand in hand, but that is not the case here. And this is a perfect storm, because now you have lawmakers there and leaders of that state trying to stop ICE operations. Well, there's a Supreme Court case about all this, right? There is federal supremacy when it comes to federal law enforcement, and they're not abiding by it. The latest shooting was a Venezuelan man who went at an ICE officer with a shovel. Well, a shovel is considered a weapon, and I think and luckily he was only shot in the leg to stop this attack. But you're going to see more and more of these, Tom, throughout the next days, weeks, months as these protests continue. They really need to stop, and it needs to come from the leaders in that particular state.
I mean, the Insurrection Act is not something you hear about every day, is it? It's a pretty serious piece of legislation. I mean, can we really see? Do you think it's likely we're going to see U.S. troops on the streets of Minneapolis, for example?
Maybe. I mean, look, we've definitely escalated from both sides. So Tim Walz, the governor there, has taken to the courts to stop any sort of ICE enforcement happening, which, we know that's going to fail just based on, the laws in the books already. But he's going to try to delay it. So Trump is going to try to do something and, bring on the Insurrection Act to bring, those who are trying to impede these operations into a federal court. It's going to be a back and forth, and it's going to be fought out legally. But at the end of the day, we need these ICE officers to do their jobs. They don't get to choose their assignments. They're told to go somewhere and get it done. So the fact that they're in the front lines of this and having to be harassed, having fireworks thrown at them, having all sorts of makeshift weapons used to attack them, this is not right. And I think that we need to really tone down the rhetoric here from both sides to really calm it down, because neither side should be attacking each other. This is a political fight.
Right. I'm just wondering, to wrap up, I mean, what are the poll numbers saying? Are there any opinion polls? What are they saying on the talk shows? Do people on the whole seem to approve of President Trump's approach to immigration?
Well, President Trump was put into office for this very matter, to close the borders and to remove illegal criminals out of our country. Look, Tom, this was never going to be a pretty operation. It was always going to be ugly. When you remove illegals, deport them, throw them on buses and planes and trains to get them out of here, it was never going to look great. And one deputy police commissioner I was talking to, he said everyone has cameras there and they're all looking for a fight. So the officers are standing down. They're not even responding to some of the harassment that's been happening to them, both physically and verbally, because they don't want to be part of a viral moment. Everyone has their phones out recording every single thing, and they're just waiting because they know that the international news is covering all this. So right now it's a bit of a standoff, but it has to end. If the local lawmakers won't do so, then President Trump will come in.
All right. Well, thank you very much indeed. Really appreciate you taking the time to talk through all of that at breakneck speed. Angie Wong, Republican strategist, thank you very much indeed for your time.